done, a lot of supply will be done to developing nations. Have you been able to realize, if not full, part of that ambition?
Well, I think when this whole acquisition took place, I think there was a seed for a need. And I think the need was that until unless you do not identify what the needs are, you are not going to move around. We have been talking about the vaccine industry in Asia per se, and I think if you look at the total population per se, I think the 37% of the population comes in India in the entire Asian countries, and I think we looking at the large birth cohorts that we have in our country. But the fact remains is that each and every healthy individual can be actually vaccinated. So in fact, you really need to identify what is the disease burden in the country, and then based on that, what are the vaccines that you require. And I think that was the mindset of actually Sanofi when we acquired Shanta at that point in time. And I think the kind of pipelines or the products that we foresee coming in there, I think we will be able to achieve what we wanted to achieve out of Shanta acquisition.
Could you outline some parts of your expansion plans? I heard a lot of capex is being put in there, and what will be the overall goal in terms of reaching out those vaccines to the other Asian nations which equally probably are in need of vaccines?
Well, I think the news which is there, or which is already there in the public domain, in fact, it's already there, and I think, in fact, there has been a lot of capex which has been put in there, and I think the whole interest is to really not look only in Asia, but even look beyond Asia. And I think that's the aspiration and dream that we have with this new capex investment that's taking place. And I think we have the capabilities to really, take it forward from there.
So when it will be appropriate to bring you at this point of time when we are also discussing a lot of Asia. You have a nice comparative chart about what India is doing and what China is doing and what is the latest happening so far as the Chinese industry is concerned. You probably have a bigger a scope there in terms of the number of vaccine manufacturers in China, the fast process in which the regulatory clearances are happening there. What do you think? Is it like you see a real threat to the Indian industry in the years to come?
Thanks. Before talking, I have to make a kind of terminology analysis. We are talking about vaccine. There's two types of vaccines. One is preventive vaccine, one is therapeutic vaccines. So this is two totally different animals. Today, I think we are focused on the preventive vaccine. However, I think over the course of panel discussion, we are going to touch on the therapeutic vaccine as well. In terms of the preventive vaccines, what I have observed for the Chinese government and the Indian government and the other developed countries that we are going to talk about is, in some ways, I think the Chinese government done something pretty smart, which is there's no CMO, basically there's no CMO services in China, because the regulatory requires that if you sell a product, if you market a product in China, basically you have to manufacturing by the company. So therefore, the quality control is a little bit easier than the Indian biotech industry so far. Because if you produce the product and then you sell the product, you have to make sure it's working, the quality control system is there. From the Indian side, the CMO can be disassociated with the products. So you can contract your manufacturing into CMO companies. Therefore, there's a mislink between the CMO and the finished product. So that creates a lot of problems along the line. So I think this is one thing that we probably have to focus on, how to bring the gap between the CMO industry and the finished product eventually sell in the Indian market. So this is the thing also in Brazil, as well in Russia, the CMO is detached with the finished product. So that's something I want to everybody be aware of it, and hopefully you'll pay more attention to this part.
There is a tremendous appetite, so far as the MNCs are concerned in terms of tapping the Chinese, vaccine market. We see a lot of investments happening there. So, though there were, some foggy issues so far as the regulatory issues are concerned, it just got cleared last year, and it was still there. The investment appetite was still there. What do you think was actually working for those investment ideas?
I couldn't quite understand the question, but
What were the triggers for investment? I mean, it's definitely a big market there, but still there were a lot of regulatory issues which were still there dogging the Chinese industry. Why do you think there was still so much of appetite from the global companies to invest in China?
I try my best to answer this question. I think there's, if you look at the industry trend between, let's say, China and India, because that's the two most talked about BRIC countries in terms of life science sector. If you look at China, they have started the biotech industry basically 15, 16 years ago. So there's almost like two decades of development there already, especially a lot of overseas trained Chinese. We call them sea turtles, coming from the US trained, get a PhD, MD from the US university institutions, and then worked in the multinational companies such as GSK, Pfizer, Sanofi, and then got training here, and they went back to China. Therefore, the talents there is pretty more advanced than India right now, because there's a lot of people trained in US, and I didn't see a sea turtle change for the Indian people come back, train in US and trying to get the biotech industry. Therefore, there's about 7-8 years lag from the Indian side compared with the China side. Therefore, this 7-8 years is very critical at this point, because when you talk about the China biotech industry, it's pretty much if you see the learning curve, it's pretty higher or sharper than the Indian right now. It's still on the lower ball curve. Therefore, such as GSK, Pfizer, Merck, all these big giant international companies, when they think about, let's say, do a manufacturing facility in China versus in India, the first to come to their mind would be in China, because the talents are there. Basically, the industry is much more mature there compared with India. So that's my observation.
So I have a little different funda there. Is look at the domestic attractiveness of China versus domestic attractiveness of India. It's maybe 7 times more domestically attractive. Look at the price points China and price point India. Maybe it's 100% better price point than India. Then you look at the regulations in China. They are much certain, they are much clear, and they are implemented. Whether you take IPR or you take any other approvals, they are very clear. Though there is China in approval takes time, but it's clear as to how the approval process works. Now, given this environment, and then what he said was the people, the capability is building very fast. Why will not somebody invest in China, and why will invest in India? There is uncertainty on regulations. There is IPR is not clear. There is uncertainty at what price point you can launch. Even if you launch at a very high price point, the generics will come in pretty fast and take everything from you. So that makes it very difficult for a multinational companies to take a decision to invest in India.
Very valid point. So to bring you in at this point, you had mentioned that it's not just about China and India. Lots of other countries in the Asia region, Malaysia, Bangladesh, they have also been doing very well in terms of their own vaccine, in terms of of their own vaccine programs. So how do you think the whole thing can be studied closer? Can you share some examples of how you've been able to be more successful in maybe smaller countries? And though we feel that they are a little less developed, the regulatory standards seem to be quite geared up.
Thanks, Vikas. See, I'll handle that in 2 parts. If you look at, and I'll take a slightly contrarian view on this. As far as GSK is concerned, and I can say this on behalf of my principals, that we believe strongly in the Indian vaccine market and the opportunity. And one indication of that is, I think back in 2005, 2006, we put a small